Sarah Martinez had always been told she was too small, too weak, too different to make it in the military's most elite units. Standing at 5'4" with a slender build, she hardly looked like the typical Navy SEAL candidate. But what others saw as weaknesses, Sarah saw as motivation. Every dismissive comment, every skeptical glance, every shake of the head from recruiters only fueled her determination to prove them wrong. Growing up in a small town in Texas, Sarah was the daughter of a single mother who worked 3 jobs to keep them afloat. Maria Martinez had immigrated from Mexico, with nothing but hope and an unshakable work ethic. She taught Sarah that limitations existed only in the mind, and that persistence could overcome any obstacle. These lessons would prove more valuable than any formal training Sarah would ever receive. From an early age, Sarah was drawn to physical challenges. While other girls her age were playing with dolls or gossiping about boys, Sarah was climbing trees, racing her bicycle down steep hills, and challenging the neighborhood boys to wrestling matches. Her mother often found her doing push-ups in her bedroom or running laps around their small backyard, always pushing herself to go faster, do more, be better. High school brought new opportunities and new challenges. Sarah joined the track team, where her natural speed and endurance quickly made her a standout athlete. She specialized in middle-distance running, events that required both speed and stamina. Her coach, a former Marine named Jim Thompson, noticed something special about Sarah's mental toughness. While other athletes would slow down when the pain kicked in, Sarah seemed to thrive on it. She had an ability to push through discomfort that was rare, even among elite athletes. Coach Thompson became Sarah's first real mentor. He taught her about military history, shared stories of famous battles, and introduced her to the concept of special operations forces. Sarah was fascinated by the stories of elite warriors who operated in small teams, relying on skill, intelligence, and sheer determination to accomplish impossible missions. The idea of being part of such a brotherhood appealed to her deeply. During her senior year, military recruiters visited the school. Sarah approached the Navy recruiter with confidence, expressing her interest in becoming a Navy SEAL. The recruiter, a weathered chief petty officer named Rodriguez, looked her up and down with obvious skepticism. "Little lady," he said with a condescending smile, "maybe you should consider becoming a corpsman or working in intelligence. The SEALs are for a different kind of person." That comment stung, but it also crystallized Sarah's resolve. She spent the rest of her senior year preparing for military service with an intensity that worried her mother. Sarah woke up at 4 every morning to run 5 miles before school. She spent her afternoons in the gym working with weights that seemed impossibly heavy for her frame. She studied military history, memorized famous quotes from legendary warriors, and visualized herself succeeding where others expected her to fail. The day after graduation, Sarah walked into the Navy recruiting office and signed her enlistment papers. The same recruiter who had dismissed her months earlier processed her paperwork with a mixture of surprise and resignation. "Boot camp's going to be tough," he warned her. "A lot of people who think they're tough enough wash out in the first week." Sarah looked him straight in the eye and replied, "I'm not a lot of people." Boot camp at Great Lakes Naval Training Center was indeed challenging, but not in the ways Sarah had expected. The physical demands were significant but manageable for someone who had spent years conditioning her body. The real challenge was the constant psychological pressure from drill instructors who seemed determined to break her spirit. They singled her out for extra attention, piled on additional duties, and subjected her to a level of scrutiny that her male counterparts didn't face. Petty Officer First Class Williams was particularly harsh. A massive man with arms like tree trunks and a voice that could shatter glass, he made it clear from day one that he didn't think women belonged in combat roles. He called Sarah princess and lightweight, assigned her the heaviest packs during marches, and made her repeat exercises until she was on the verge of collapse. "You think you're special, Martinez?" he would shout as Sarah struggled through her 10th set of burpees. "You think because you can run fast in high school, you can hang with real warriors? This isn't track and field, princess. This is the real world, where weakness gets people killed." Sarah never responded to the taunts with anger or defiance. Instead, she channeled every insult into fuel for her performance. When Williams made her carry 2 packs during a 10-mile march, she did it without complaint. When he assigned her to scrub the barracks floor with a toothbrush while others rested, she completed the task with methodical precision. Her quiet determination began to earn the respect of her fellow recruits. even if it didn't impress the drill instructors. The turning point came during the 5th week of boot camp. The recruits were participating in a confidence course that included a 30-foot rope climb. Many of the male recruits struggled with the climb, their larger frames working against them as they tried to haul themselves up using only their arms. Sarah watched them carefully, analyzing their technique and identifying the mistakes that were causing them to fail. When her turn came, Sarah approached the rope with the same calm focus she had brought to every other challenge. Instead of trying to muscle her way up like the bigger recruits, she used her legs to grip the rope and her core strength to maintain stability. Her smaller size actually worked to her advantage, requiring less brute force to lift her body weight. She reached the top in record time, ringing the bell with a satisfying clang that echoed across the training ground. The drill instructors were visibly surprised, but Williams wasn't ready to concede anything. "Lucky climb, Martinez," he said. "Let's see you do it again." Sarah climbed down and immediately started her second ascent. Again, she reached the top faster than anyone else in her division. Williams ordered a third climb, then a fourth. By the 5th climb, even the other recruits were watching with admiration. Sarah's technique was flawless, her breathing controlled, her movements efficient. She had turned a test of strength into a demonstration of skill and mental toughness. After the 7th consecutive climb, Williams finally called a halt. Sarah descended the rope one last time, her hands raw and bleeding, but her expression calm and confident. "Good enough for now, Martinez," Williams said, his tone noticeably different. "Hit the showers." That night, Sarah's bunkmate, a tall kid from Iowa named Peterson, approached her with obvious curiosity. "How did you make that look so easy?" he asked. "I barely made it up once, and you did it 7 times like it was nothing." Sarah smiled as she applied bandages to her torn palms. "It's not about being the strongest," she explained. "It's about being smart, staying calm, and never giving up. Strength is just one tool. If you only have one tool, you're going to struggle when you encounter a problem that tool can't solve." Word of Sarah's rope climbing performance spread quickly through the recruit division. Suddenly, other recruits were coming to her for advice on various challenges. She helped them improve their running technique, taught them more efficient ways to complete obstacle courses, and shared strategies for staying mentally focused during high-stress situations. Her natural leadership abilities were becoming evident to everyone except the drill instructors, who seemed determined to maintain their skeptical stance. The academic portions of boot camp played to Sarah's strengths. She had always been a strong student, and the military curriculum felt manageable compared to the physical and psychological challenges. She excelled in navigation, communications, and tactical theory. Her instructors noted her ability to quickly grasp complex concepts and apply them in practical situations. She scored in the top 5% on every written exam and consistently performed well in simulation exercises. During weapons training, Sarah faced another set of stereotypes. Many assumed that her small stature would make it difficult for her to handle military firearms effectively. The M16 rifle looked almost comically large in her hands, and some of the male recruits made jokes about whether she could even lift it properly. Their laughter stopped when Sarah stepped up to the firing line. Years of hunting with her grandfather had given her a solid foundation in marksmanship, but her natural hand-eye coordination and ability to remain calm under pressure made her exceptional. She consistently scored expert level on the rifle range, often outperforming recruits who had bragged about their shooting experience. Gunnery Sergeant Patricia Collins, the marksmanship instructor, was impressed by Sarah's performance. Collins was one of the few female instructors at the training center, and she had seen many promising female recruits get discouraged by the constant questioning of their abilities. After a particularly impressive day on the range, Collins pulled Sarah aside for a private conversation. "You've got natural talent, Martinez," Collins said, "but more importantly, you've got the right attitude. I've been watching you these past few weeks, and I see something special. Have you given any thought to what you want to do after boot camp?" Sarah didn't hesitate. "I want to be a Navy SEAL, Gunny." Collins raised an eyebrow. "That's a tough road, especially for someone like you. The training is brutal, the failure rate is astronomical, and you'll be facing challenges that go way beyond what you've experienced here." "I understand that, Gunny, but I also understand that someone has to be first. Why not me?" Collins studied Sarah's face. Looking for any sign of doubt or bravado, she saw only quiet confidence and unshakable determination. "If you're serious about this, You need to start preparing now. SEAL training isn't just about being tough enough to survive the physical demands. You need to be smart, adaptable, and able to think clearly when everything around you is chaos. You need to be a problem solver, not just a warrior. That conversation marked the beginning of Sarah's real preparation for SEAL training. Collins became an unofficial mentor, providing additional training sessions after regular hours. She taught Sarah advanced marksmanship techniques, introduced her to small unit tactics, and helped her develop the kind of mental discipline that would be essential in special operations. The final weeks of boot camp passed quickly. Sarah's reputation as a standout recruit was well established, and even Williams had grudgingly acknowledged her abilities. During the graduation ceremony, Sarah was named the honor graduate of her division, an achievement that surprised no one who had watched her performance over the previous 8 weeks. As Sarah stood at attention, receiving congratulations from the commanding officer, she thought about the long journey that had brought her to this point. Boot camp had been challenging, but she knew it was just the beginning. The real test was still ahead, and she was ready to face whatever challenges awaited her. After graduation, Sarah was assigned to A School for advanced technical training. She had requested assignment to the Special Warfare Preparatory Course, the first step toward SEAL training. Her request was approved, largely on the strength of her boot camp performance and the recommendation from Gunnery Sergeant Collins. The preparatory course was designed to give potential SEAL candidates a taste of what they would face in basic underwater demolition/SEAL training, commonly known as BUD/S. The course lasted 8 weeks and covered advanced physical conditioning, basic water skills, and introduction to special warfare tactics. Sarah arrived at the Naval Special Warfare Center in Coronado, California, with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. The facility was legendary among military personnel, known for producing some of the most elite warriors in the world. It was also known for breaking the dreams of countless hopeful candidates who discovered that wanting something badly wasn't enough to achieve it. Her first day at the preparatory course brought a familiar reception. The instructors, all former SEALs themselves, looked at Sarah with the same skepticism she had faced throughout her military career. Petty Officer First Class Jackson, the lead instructor, made no effort to hide his doubts about her presence in the program. "I don't know who thought it was a good idea to send a little girl to warrior training," Jackson announced to the assembled candidates on the first day. "But since you're here, Martinez, you'll get the same treatment as everyone else. No special consideration, no reduced standards, no excuses. If you can't hack it, there's the door." Sarah had heard variations of this speech many times before. She simply nodded and took her place among the other candidates, ready to prove once again that underestimating her was a mistake that people only made once. The preparatory course was indeed more challenging than boot camp, but Sarah adapted quickly. The physical training was more intense, the academic requirements more demanding, and the psychological pressure more constant. Candidates were pushed to their limits and beyond, with instructors constantly looking for signs of weakness or hesitation. During water confidence training, Sarah faced one of her biggest challenges. Swimming had never been her strongest skill, and the ocean around Coronado was cold, rough, and unforgiving. The instructors seemed to take particular pleasure in making the water exercises as difficult as possible, often extending training sessions well beyond their scheduled duration. One particularly brutal day involved a 2-mile ocean swim in heavy surf. Several candidates had already been pulled from the water by safety personnel, overcome by the cold and the constant battering of the waves. Sarah was struggling more than she cared to admit, her smaller body losing heat faster than her larger classmates. As she fought through the churning water, Sarah felt her strength beginning to fade. Her stroke became less efficient, her breathing more labored. For a moment, she considered signaling for help, joining the growing list of candidates who had decided that SEAL training wasn't for them after all. Then she remembered her mother's words about limitations existing only in the mind. She thought about all the people who had told her she wasn't strong enough, fast enough, tough enough to succeed. She visualized herself ringing the bell that would signal her surrender, walking away from the one thing she wanted more than anything else in the world. The thought of giving up filled Sarah with a rage that burned hotter than the cold water that surrounded her. She adjusted her stroke, found her rhythm, and pushed forward with renewed determination. She passed several candidates who had started the swim ahead of her, her technique compensating for her lack of raw power. When she finally reached the finish point, Sarah was exhausted but triumphant. She had not only completed the swim, but had finished in the top third of the remaining candidates. As she climbed out of the water, her legs shaking from cold and fatigue, she caught a glimpse of Instructor Jackson watching her with what might have been the beginning of respect. The preparatory course concluded with a comprehensive evaluation that would determine which candidates would be recommended for Bud/S. Sarah's scores were consistently high across all categories: physical fitness, academic performance, leadership potential, and mental toughness. Her instructors noted her ability to perform under pressure and her talent for helping struggling teammates improve their performance. On the final day of the course, Instructor Jackson called Sarah into his office for a private meeting. She expected another lecture about the challenges she would face, or perhaps an attempt to discourage her from continuing with SEAL training. Instead, Jackson surprised her with his first words. "You've earned my respect, Martinez," he said without preamble. "When you first showed up here, I figured you'd be gone within a week. I've seen a lot of tough guys wash out of this program, and I didn't think someone your size could handle the physical demands." I was wrong. Sarah remained at attention, unsure how to respond to what sounded like praise from someone who had been one of her harshest critics. Jackson continued, "But I'm going to give you some advice that might save you a lot of pain and disappointment. Bud/S is going to be harder than anything you've experienced so far. The instructors there won't care about your impressive performance here. They'll start from zero with you, and they'll push you further than you think you can go. Are you sure you're ready for that?" Sarah met his gaze directly. "I'm ready, petty officer. I've been ready my whole life." Jackson nodded slowly. "I believe you are. Your recommendation for Bud/S will be approved. Don't make me regret it." As Sarah left the instructor's office, she felt a surge of pride and anticipation. She had cleared another hurdle on the path to becoming a Navy SEAL. The biggest challenges still lay ahead, but she had proven to herself and others that she belonged in this elite community. The weeks between the preparatory course and the start of Bud/S passed quickly. SAS passed quickly. Sarah used the time to continue her physical conditioning and mental preparation. She studied everything she could find about SEAL training, memorized the names and backgrounds of famous SEALs, and visualized herself succeeding where others had failed. She also called her mother to share the news of her acceptance into Bud/S. Maria Martinez listened with pride as her daughter described her achievements and her plans for the future. "I always knew you were special, Mija," she said. "But remember that being special isn't enough. You have to be smart, you have to be tough, and you have to never give up. No matter what they throw at you, you don't give up." As Sarah prepared for the next phase of her journey, she reflected on how far she had come from that small town in Texas. She had faced skepticism, overcome challenges, and proven her worth at every step. But she also knew that everything she had accomplished so far was just preparation for the real test that awaited her at Bud/S, the day before she was scheduled to report to Coronado for the beginning of SEAL training. Sarah took a long run along the beach. As she watched the sun set over the Pacific Ocean, she made a silent promise to herself and to everyone who had ever doubted her capabilities. She would not just survive Bud/S, she would excel. She would become the first female Navy SEAL, not through luck or lowered standards, but through sheer determination, intelligence, and an unbreakable will to succeed. The stage was set for the greatest challenge of Sarah Martinez's life. Everything she had learned, every obstacle she had overcome, every moment of doubt she had conquered had led to this point. In just a few hours, she would begin the journey that would either fulfill her lifelong dream or break her spirit entirely. As she finished her run and headed back to her quarters, Sarah felt a calm confidence settle over her. She was ready for whatever Bud/S would throw at her. She had been preparing for this moment her entire life, and she would not be denied. The first day of basic underwater demolition/SEAL training arrived with the kind of gray, overcast morning that seemed to mirror the uncertainty Sarah felt in her stomach. She stood in formation with 127 other candidates, all of them eager to prove they had what it took to become Navy SEALs. Sarah was the only woman in the group, a fact that was impossible to ignore given the stares and whispered conversations that followed her wherever she went. Class 234 was about to begin what was widely considered the most difficult military training program in the world. The statistics were sobering. Historically, only about 20% of candidates who started Bud/S actually graduated. The rest would ring out, hitting the brass bell 3 times to signal their voluntary withdrawal from the program, or be dropped for medical reasons, performance failures, or disciplinary issues. Chief Petty Officer Marcus Stone stood before the assembled candidates like a force of nature. At 6'3" tall, with the build of a professional athlete and the weathered face of someone who had seen combat in multiple theaters, Stone commanded immediate respect. His reputation preceded him. He was known as one of the toughest instructors in the Bud/S program, someone who took personal satisfaction in identifying and eliminating candidates who didn't belong. "Welcome to Hell Week preparation," Stone announced, his voice carrying easily across the formation. "For the next 6 months, this will be your life. You will eat, sleep, and breathe becoming a SEAL. Most of you will fail. That's not pessimism, that's statistics. The question isn't whether you'll face a moment when you want to quit. The question is what you'll do when that moment comes." His eyes found Sarah in the formation and lingered there for several seconds longer than necessary. "Some of you are here because you think being a SEAL is about being tough. Some of you are here because you want to prove a point. Both of those are wrong. Being a SEAL is about being the kind of warrior who can complete impossible missions while never letting down the teammates who depend on you. If you're here for any reason other than serving your country and protecting your brothers, you're in the wrong place." The first phase of Bud/S lasted 8 weeks and focused on physical conditioning, water competency, and the infamous Hell Week. Sarah knew that Hell Week was where most candidates failed, and she had spent months mentally preparing for the 5.5 days of continuous training with virtually no sleep. The initial weeks of first phase were demanding but manageable for someone with Sarah's level of preparation. The daily physical training sessions were intense, starting before dawn with runs on the soft sand of Coronado Beach. The instructors set a brutal pace, and candidates who fell behind were subjected to additional remedial training that made the regular workouts seem easy by comparison. Sarah's running experience served her well during these early sessions. While larger candidates struggled with the sand and the sustained pace, Sarah found a rhythm that allowed her to stay with the lead group. Her efficient stride and superior cardiovascular conditioning helped her maintain the required pace even as others began to fall behind. The obstacle course presented different challenges. Some obstacles favored larger, stronger candidates who could muscle their way through certain sections. But Sarah's analysis of each obstacle allowed her to find techniques that used leverage and momentum instead of brute strength. She spent extra time after regular training hours practicing her approach to each obstacle, timing her movements and refining her technique until she could complete the entire course efficiently. Water training was where Sarah faced her greatest struggles. The pool sessions started early, with candidates required to demonstrate basic swimming competency before moving on to more advanced skills. Sarah's swimming technique was adequate but not exceptional, and the instructors quickly identified this as a potential weakness. Instructor Petty Officer Williams, a compact man with the build of a former competitive swimmer, seemed to take particular interest in Sarah's water training. During the first week, he assigned her additional pool time and made it clear that her swimming would need to improve dramatically if she wanted to continue in the program. "Martinez," Williams called out during a particularly challenging treading water exercise, "you're working twice as hard as everyone else to stay afloat. That tells me you're fighting the water instead of working with it." In SEAL operations, efficiency in the water can mean the difference between mission success and mission failure. "We don't have time to nurse weak swimmers through this program." The comment stung, but Sarah used it as motivation to improve. She requested additional instruction and spent her limited free time in the pool, working on technique and building the specific muscle memory needed for extended water operations. Slowly, her performance began to improve. The academic portions of first phase covered topics that would be essential for SEAL operations: hydrography, beach reconnaissance, explosive ordnance, and small unit tactics. Sarah excelled in these classroom settings, her quick comprehension and analytical mind allowing her to master complex concepts rapidly. She often helped struggling classmates understand difficult material, building relationships that would prove valuable during the more challenging phases of training. It was during a land navigation exercise that Sarah first demonstrated the kind of problem-solving ability that set her apart from other candidates. The exercise required teams to locate a series of checkpoints using only map and compass, with strict time limits and penalties for errors. Sarah's team had fallen behind schedule after making a navigation error that cost them nearly an hour. With darkness approaching and 2 checkpoints still unfound, the team was facing failure and the remedial training that would follow. Sarah studied the map carefully, analyzing the terrain and the pattern of checkpoints they had already located. She identified a route that would allow them to reach both remaining checkpoints by cutting across a steep ridge instead of following the easier but longer valley route. "That's going to be a tough climb," her teammate Peterson warned. "And if we're wrong about the checkpoint locations, we'll be even further behind." Sarah looked at the map one more time, double-checking her calculations. "The pattern is clear. The checkpoints are positioned to test specific navigation skills, and there's a logic to their placement. If we go this way, we can make up the lost time and finish within the time limit." Her confidence convinced the team to follow her plan. The ridge climb was indeed challenging, requiring the team to rope together and help each other over the most difficult sections. But Sarah's navigation was accurate, and they reached both checkpoints with time to spare. More importantly, the teamwork required for the climb built a bond among the team members that would prove valuable during the more challenging phases of training. Chief Stone noticed Sarah's performance during the exercise debriefing. "Good problem solving, Martinez," he said. "SEALs operate in situations where standard solutions don't work. The ability to analyze a problem and find an unconventional solution is more valuable than pure physical strength." As first phase progressed, Sarah began to establish herself as a natural leader among the candidates. Her willingness to help struggling classmates, combined with her consistent performance and calm demeanor under pressure, earned her the respect of her peers. She was elected as one of the class leaders, a position that came with additional responsibilities but also demonstrated her growing status within the group. The leadership position brought new challenges. Chief Stone and the other instructors held class leaders to a higher standard, and any failures by their assigned groups were treated as leadership failures. Sarah found herself responsible not just for her own performance, but for motivating and supporting a dozen other candidates who were struggling with various aspects of training. During one particularly difficult week, 3 members of Sarah's group were in danger of being dropped from the program. One was failing the swimming requirements, another was consistently finishing last in runs, and the third was struggling with the academic material. Sarah could have focused solely on her own performance, but instead she organized additional study and training sessions for her group. She worked with the struggling swimmer every evening, breaking down stroke technique and helping him build the confidence needed for the more challenging water exercises. She created a running training plan for the candidate who was falling behind, focusing on pacing and mental strategies for dealing with discomfort. And she developed study materials that simplified the complex academic concepts for the candidate who was struggling with the classroom work. All 3 candidates improved enough to continue in the program, and Sarah's reputation as a leader was solidified. Even candidates from other groups began approaching her for advice and assistance. Her ability to see solutions where others saw only problems was becoming legendary among the class. But not everyone appreciated Sarah's success. A small group of candidates, led by a former college football player named Brandon Hayes, resented her presence in the program and her growing influence among their classmates. Hayes was struggling with some aspects of training himself, and he seemed to blame Sarah for making him look bad by comparison. "She doesn't belong here," Hayes complained to anyone who would listen. "They're going to lower the standards for her, and it's going to get real SEALs killed in combat. This diversity experiment is going to end badly." The tension came to a head during a combat conditioning exercise in week 6 of first phase. The exercise required candidates to work in pairs, carrying heavy boat paddles while running through soft sand and completing various physical challenges. Hayes was paired with Sarah for the exercise, and he made no effort to hide his displeasure. From the start, Hayes refused to coordinate his movements with Sarah's. He deliberately ran at a pace that was too fast for efficient teamwork, causing both of them to waste energy fighting each other instead of working together. When Sarah tried to communicate about timing and rhythm, Hayes ignored her completely. The exercise included a section where teams had to carry their paddles through a series of obstacles while maintaining physical contact. Hayes made this as difficult as possible, jerking the paddle suddenly and changing direction without warning. Sarah adapted to his uncooperative behavior, adjusting her technique to compensate for his deliberate sabotage. During the final section of the exercise, teams were required to carry their paddles overhead while traversing a narrow beam over a water obstacle. Hayes waited until they were halfway across the beam, then deliberately shifted his weight in a way that threw Sarah off balance. She stumbled and fell into the cold water below, still holding on to her end of the paddle. As Sarah climbed out of the water, Hayes smirked and made a comment loud enough for nearby instructors to hear. "Guess she's not as tough as she pretends to be." Chief Stone witnessed the entire incident and immediately called both candidates over for a private discussion. Sarah assumed she was in trouble for falling into the water, but Stone's anger was directed entirely at Hayes. "Deliberate sabotage of a teammate is about the most unSEAL-like behavior I can imagine," Stone said, his voice deadly calm. "SEALs depend on each other for survival. If you can't work with Martinez because she's a woman, what happens when you're deployed with female support personnel? What happens when you're working with female assets in other countries?" Hayes tried to defend his actions, claiming that Sarah had been the one who couldn't keep up, but Stone cut him off. "I saw what happened, Hayes. You deliberately tried to make your teammate fail. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. You're dropped from the program, effective immediately. Pack your gear and report to the administrative office." Sarah watched Hayes walk away, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and concern. She was glad that his behavior had been addressed, but she knew that his attitude was shared by others in the class. His departure might eliminate one source of hostility, but it wouldn't change the underlying skepticism that many people felt about her presence in the program. The incident had an unexpected positive effect on class morale. Many candidates who had been neutral or quietly skeptical about Sarah's presence saw Hayes' behavior as completely unacceptable. His removal sent a clear message that the instructors would not tolerate discrimination or sabotage, regardless of the target. As first phase neared its conclusion, the candidates began preparing for Hell Week, the ultimate test of physical and mental endurance. Sarah knew that this would be her greatest challenge yet. Hell Week was designed to push candidates beyond their physical and psychological breaking points, to see who had the mental toughness needed for special operations. The week before Hell Week, Chief Stone called Sarah into his office for a private meeting. She expected another warning about the challenges ahead, but instead found herself facing a different kind of conversation. "Martinez, your performance in first phase has been outstanding," Stone began. "Your leadership, problem-solving ability, and teamwork have been exemplary. But Hell Week is different. It's designed to find your breaking point and push you past it. Everyone breaks during Hell Week. The question is whether you can function after you break." Sarah nodded, unsure where the conversation was heading. Stone continued. "You're going to face challenges that your male classmates won't face. Some of the instructors are still skeptical about women in special operations, and they're going to be looking for any sign that you can't handle the pressure. You'll be under more scrutiny than anyone else in the class. I understand that, Chief. I've been dealing with extra scrutiny my entire military career. This will be different," Stone warned. "You'll be cold, wet, exhausted, and pushed beyond what you think you can endure. In that state, small problems become huge, minor discomforts become agony, and rational thought becomes nearly impossible. Are you prepared for that?" Sarah met his gaze directly. "I've been preparing for Hell Week my entire life, Chief. Not just physically, but mentally. I know it's going to be the hardest thing I've ever done, but I also know that I won't quit. I can't quit. Too many people are depending on me to succeed." Stone studied her face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "I believe you're ready. But remember, Hell Week isn't about surviving. It's about proving that you can continue to function and lead others even when you're operating on nothing but willpower. Don't just endure Hell Week, Martinez. Dominate it." As Sarah left Stone's office, she felt the weight of expectation settling on her shoulders. She wasn't just representing herself during Hell Week. She was representing every woman who had ever been told she wasn't tough enough for combat roles. The pressure was immense, but it was also motivating. She spent the final days before Hell Week in careful preparation, organizing her gear, reviewing emergency procedures, and mentally rehearsing the challenges she expected to face. She also reached out to her remaining classmates, strengthening the bonds that would be essential for mutual support during the difficult days ahead. The night before Hell Week began, Sarah called her mother one last time. Maria Martinez listened as her daughter explained what she was about to endure, offering words of encouragement, and reminding Sarah of the strength she had shown throughout her life. "Remember, Mija," her mother said, "you don't have to be the strongest person there. You just have to be the one who never gives up. No matter how hard it gets, no matter how much it hurts, you keep going. That's who you are." As Sarah hung up the phone and prepared for bed, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. Everything she had accomplished, every challenge she had overcome, had been leading to Hell Week. In less than 12 hours, she would begin the most difficult test of her life. She was ready. The brass bell that would end Sarah's SEAL training journey sat only 30 yards away, gleaming in the harsh overhead lights that had been on continuously for the past 4 days. It would be so easy to walk over and ring it 3 times, signaling her withdrawal from the program. The warm, dry building behind the bell promised hot food, warm clothes, and an end to the misery that had become her constant companion. Sarah forced herself to look away from the bell and focus on the task at hand. She was lying flat on her stomach in 6 inches of cold mud, an inflatable boat balanced on her back while Chief Stone shouted instructions through a megaphone. Her entire body ached from 4 days of continuous physical activity with less than 4 hours of total sleep. Her hands were raw and bleeding from rope burns, her feet were swollen and blistered from constant wetness, and her shoulders felt like they were on fire from carrying heavy boats and equipment. "Martinez!" Stone's voice cut through her exhaustion like a whip. "Your boat is sagging on the left side. If I can see daylight under that boat, you and your boat crew are going to spend some quality time with the surf." Sarah adjusted her position, pressing her back higher to level the boat. The movement sent sharp pains through her shoulders and back, but she gritted her teeth and maintained the position. Around her, she could hear the labored breathing of her 5 boat crew members, all of them fighting the same battle against exhaustion and pain. Hell Week had started 68 hours ago with a simulation of a beach assault. The candidates had been awakened at midnight by instructors firing blank ammunition and setting off smoke grenades. From that moment, the psychological pressure had been relentless. Sleep was limited to brief catnaps snatched between evolutions. Food was eaten while standing in formation, and the only constant was discomfort. The first day had been about establishing the rhythm of Hell Week. The candidates learned quickly that there was no time for individual concerns or personal comfort. Everything was done as a team, and the success or failure of the team depended on the weakest member's performance. Sarah's boat crew had worked together well during the initial evolutions, but the stress of continuous training was beginning to show. By the second day, candidates were starting to quit. The bell rang regularly as exhausted trainees decided they had endured enough. Sarah watched each departure with mixed emotions. Part of her felt sorry for the candidates who were giving up their dreams, but another part was relieved that the competition was becoming less intense. The instructors were masters of psychological manipulation, constantly adjusting the pressure to find each candidate's breaking point. They would promise that the current evolution was the last one of the day, only to immediately announce another exercise. They would allow candidates to think they might get a few hours of sleep, then rouse them for an emergency drill. Nothing could be counted on except that the misery would continue. Water training during Hell Week was particularly brutal. The candidates spent hours in the cold Pacific Ocean, often fully clothed and carrying equipment. The instructors had them perform various exercises in the surf, boat races, log carries, and endless repetitions of basic swimming strokes. Sarah's smaller size made her more vulnerable to hypothermia, and she had to work constantly to maintain her core temperature. During one particularly challenging surf evolution, Sarah's boat crew was struggling to maintain their position against heavy waves. The 7-person crew was responsible for maneuvering a heavy inflatable boat through breaking surf, a task that required perfect timing and coordination. 3 members of their crew had already made significant mistakes, and the instructors were paying close attention to their performance. As they approached the beach through the churning water, a large wave caught their boat and flipped it completely over. Sarah found herself underwater, trapped beneath the boat with her life jacket tangled in the rigging. The cold water and her exhaustion made it difficult to orient herself and find a way to the surface. For a moment, panic threatened to overwhelm her. She was running out of air, her heavy equipment was pulling her down, and she couldn't see which way was up. The thought flashed through her mind that this might be how her SEAL training ended, not with the voluntary ring of a bell, but with a medical emergency that would force her withdrawal. Then her training kicked in. She stopped struggling against the equipment and methodically worked to free herself from the tangled rigging. She followed the air bubbles to determine which direction was up, then kicked strongly toward the surface. When she finally broke through, gasping for air, she found Chief Stone standing waist-deep in the surf, watching her with an expression of professional interest. "Having fun yet, Martinez?" he asked as she swam toward shore. "Hoo-yah, Chief," she gasped, using the traditional SEAL response that meant she was ready for whatever came next. "Good, because we're doing it again." The boat crew spent the next 2 hours repeating the surf exercise until they could complete it flawlessly, even in the worst conditions. By the time they finished, Sarah's lips were blue from cold, and her hands were too numb to feel the rope burns on her palms. But she had proven to herself and the instructors that she could function effectively even after being pushed to her physical limits. The third day of Hell Week brought new challenges and new opportunities for failure. The candidates were introduced to sugar cookies, an evolution that involved rolling in the sand while soaking wet, then completing physical exercises while covered from head to toe in gritty sand. The sand worked its way into every piece of equipment, every article of clothing, and every exposed bit of skin. Sarah discovered that being covered in sand while exhausted and cold was a unique form of misery. The sand stuck to her wet skin like sandpaper, rubbing away layers of skin with every movement. It got into her eyes, her mouth, and her nose, making breathing and seeing difficult. But she also noticed that complaining about the discomfort was pointless and that adapting to the conditions was the only viable strategy. During this evolution, one of her boat crew members, a strong candidate named Rodriguez, began showing signs of serious distress. He was shivering uncontrollably despite the physical exertion, and his coordination was obviously impaired. Sarah recognized the symptoms of severe hypothermia and knew that Rodriguez was in danger of serious medical problems. The instructors had noticed Rodriguez's condition as well, and they were watching to see how the boat crew would respond. Sarah knew that calling attention to a teammate's medical issues could result in his removal from the program, but she also knew that ignoring a serious medical condition could be dangerous. During a brief pause in the exercise, Sarah moved close to Rodriguez and spoke quietly. "How are you feeling, brother? You look like you're getting pretty cold." Rodriguez tried to downplay his condition. "I'm fine, just a little tired." Sarah could see that he was far from fine, but she also understood his reluctance to admit weakness. Instead of arguing with him, she positioned herself next to him during the remainder of the evolution and shared her body heat whenever possible. She also quietly encouraged other crew members to do the same, creating a support network that helped Rodriguez maintain his core temperature without drawing official attention to his condition. The strategy worked. Rodriguez recovered enough to continue with training, and the boat crew's performance actually improved because of the increased teamwork and communication. Chief Stone noticed the boat crew's cohesion and later pulled Sarah aside for a brief comment. "Good leadership, Martinez. Taking care of your teammates without compromising the mission is what SEALs do. Rodriguez owes you one." The fourth day of Hell Week was when the psychological pressure reached its peak. Candidates had been awake for almost 90 hours with only brief periods of rest, and the cumulative fatigue was affecting everyone's judgment and coordination. Simple tasks became monumentally difficult, and the instructors increased the pressure accordingly. It was during the fourth day that Sarah faced her own breaking point. The boat crew was participating in a long-distance paddle exercise, racing their inflatable boat through several miles of choppy ocean water. Sarah was responsible for steering the boat, while her crew provided the power through synchronized paddling. About halfway through the exercise, Sarah realized she was having difficulty focusing her vision. The boat seemed to be moving in slow motion, and she was having trouble coordinating her steering with the crew's paddling rhythm. Her exhaustion was so complete that her body was starting to shut down non-essential functions. As she struggled to maintain control of the boat, Sarah began to question whether she had the strength to continue. Every muscle in her body screamed for rest. Every joint ached from the constant physical stress, and her mind felt clouded and slow. For the first time since starting Bud/S, she seriously considered ringing the bell. The thought of quitting filled her with a despair that was almost as overwhelming as her physical exhaustion. She thought about all the people who had told her she wasn't strong enough for SEAL training, all the skeptics who were probably hoping she would fail. She thought about her mother, working 3 jobs to support her family, never complaining about hardship or giving up when things got difficult. Then she thought about the teammates who were depending on her to steer the boat accurately. Rodriguez was paddling with determination despite his earlier struggles. Peterson, her bunkmate from boot camp, was pulling his paddle with everything he had. Johnson, a quiet candidate from Alabama, was maintaining perfect rhythm despite obvious exhaustion. Sarah realized that her breaking point wasn't about her own limitations. It was about letting down the people who counted on her. The thought of failing her teammates gave her a surge of energy that cut through the exhaustion. She adjusted her grip on the steering oar and refocused on the task at hand. "Let's pick up the pace, guys," she called to her crew. "We've got this." The boat crew responded to her leadership, increasing their paddling rate and improving their coordination. They finished the exercise in 3rd place overall, a strong performance that impressed the instructors and boosted the crew's confidence. That night, during one of their brief rest periods, Rodriguez approached Sarah with a quiet word of thanks. "I was ready to quit during that paddle," he admitted. "But when you pushed us to go faster instead of just surviving, it reminded me why I'm here. Thanks for not letting me give up." Sarah nodded, understanding exactly how he felt. "We're all in this together. When one of us succeeds, we all succeed." The 5th day of Hell Week arrived with a sense of anticipation among the remaining candidates. They had survived the worst of the psychological pressure, and the end was finally in sight. But the instructors had saved some of the most challenging evolutions for the final day, knowing that exhausted candidates would be more vulnerable to mistakes and poor judgment. The day began with a combat mission simulation that required the candidates to work in small teams to complete a series of objectives while under simulated enemy fire. Sarah was designated as the team leader for her group, a responsibility that required her to make tactical decisions while managing the performance of 5 exhausted teammates. The mission scenario was complex, involving beach reconnaissance, target identification, and simulated demolition work. Sarah's team had to move stealthily across several miles of varied terrain, avoid detection by instructors playing enemy sentries, and complete their objectives within strict time limits. Despite her exhaustion, Sarah found that the tactical challenges helped sharpen her focus. She had always excelled at problem-solving under pressure, and the mission scenario played to her strengths. She analyzed the terrain carefully, identified the most efficient routes, and coordinated her team's movements with precision. When they encountered an unexpected obstacle in the form of an instructor-manned checkpoint, Sarah quickly developed an alternative plan that allowed them to bypass the checkpoint without being detected. Her ability to adapt quickly to changing conditions impressed not only her teammates but also the evaluating instructors who were monitoring their progress. The team completed their mission objectives ahead of schedule and without being detected, earning praise from the evaluating instructors. Sarah's leadership during the exercise had been outstanding, and her teammates acknowledged her contribution to their success. As Hell Week moved into its final hours, the surviving candidates could sense the end approaching. The constant pressure began to ease slightly, and the instructors' attitudes shifted from purely adversarial to something approaching professional respect. The candidates who had made it this far had proven something important about their character and determination. The final evolution of Hell Week was a simple ceremony called securing. The remaining candidates were called to formation one last time, and Chief Stone addressed them with words that carried special meaning for everyone who had endured the previous 5 days. "Congratulations," Stone said. "You have successfully completed Hell Week. You've proven that you have the mental toughness required for special operations. But remember, Hell Week is just one step in becoming a SEAL. The real work starts now." As the formation was dismissed, Sarah felt a mixture of relief, pride, and anticipation. She had not only survived Hell Week, but had excelled as a leader and teammate. She had proven to herself and others that she belonged in the elite community of Navy SEALs, but she also knew that Hell Week was just the beginning. The remaining phases of Bud/S would test different aspects of her abilities, and graduation was still months away. She had passed the most visible test of SEAL training, but the most important challenges might still be ahead. As she walked away from the formation area, Sarah caught sight of the brass bell that had tempted so many candidates to quit. It seemed smaller now, less intimidating. She had faced her breaking point and pushed through it, discovering reserves of strength and determination she hadn't known she possessed. The journey to becoming a Navy SEAL was far from over, but Sarah Martinez had proven that she could handle whatever challenges lay ahead. She had not just survived Hell Week, she had dominated it, earning the respect of instructors and classmates who had once doubted her abilities. Now the real test would begin. The explosion shattered the pre-dawn silence, sending Sarah Martinez diving for cover behind a concrete barrier as debris rained down around her position. The live fire exercise had just begun, and already the margin for error was razor thin. She pressed herself against the cold concrete, feeling her heart hammering as she calculated her next move. This wasn't Hell Week anymore. This was advanced combat training where mistakes could be fatal. Martinez, move your team to the primary objective. The voice of Instructor Chief Ramirez cut through the chaos of simulated battle. You have 8 minutes before enemy reinforcements arrive. Sarah gathered her 5-man team with hand signals, her mind racing through the tactical situation. They were in the final phase of Bud/S training, participating in a complex urban warfare exercise that would determine whether they were ready for real-world operations. Everything she had learned over the past 6 months would be tested in the next hour. The months following Hell Week had been a grueling progression through increasingly sophisticated training. Second phase had focused on diving in underwater operations, teaching candidates to function as combat swimmers in hostile environments. Sarah had faced her most significant challenges during this phase, as her smaller lung capacity put her at a disadvantage during long underwater swims. The diving training had pushed her to develop techniques that maximized her efficiency underwater. While her male classmates could rely on larger lung capacity for extended breath-holding exercises, Sarah had to perfect her swimming stroke and learn to minimize oxygen consumption through precise movement and mental control. She spent extra hours in the dive tank, working with instructors to refine techniques that would allow her to match the performance standards despite her physical limitations. During one particularly challenging exercise, candidates were required to swim underwater for 200 meters while carrying diving equipment, surface for 30 seconds to breathe, then continue for another 200 meters. Several candidates had failed the exercise due to panic or exhaustion, and Sarah knew her margin for error was minimal. As she prepared for the swim, Sarah entered a meditative state that she had developed during months of training. She slowed her heart rate, controlled her breathing, and visualized the entire exercise from start to finish. When the signal came to begin, she moved through the water with mechanical precision, every stroke calculated to provide maximum propulsion with minimum energy expenditure. The first 200 meters passed smoothly, and Sarah surfaced within the time limit feeling confident but cautious. The second leg would be more difficult, as fatigue would affect her stroke efficiency and oxygen consumption. She controlled her breathing during the brief surface interval, taking slow, deep breaths to maximize oxygen saturation. The final swim was a test of pure mental discipline. About halfway through, Sarah felt the familiar burning in her lungs that signaled oxygen depletion. Every instinct told her to surface for air, but she knew that giving in to the discomfort would mean failure. Instead, she focused on maintaining her stroke technique and controlling the panic that threatened to overwhelm her rational mind. She touched the finish marker with seconds to spare, surfacing to find Instructor Williams watching her performance with obvious interest. "Textbook technique, Martinez," he said. "Your efficiency underwater is becoming exceptional. That's the kind of skill that separates good SEALs from great ones." The praise meant more to Sarah than Williams probably realized. Her success in the diving phase had required her to overcome significant physical disadvantages through superior technique and mental discipline. She was proving that SEAL training wasn't just about raw physical ability, but about the intelligence and determination to find ways to excel despite limitations. Third phase focused on land warfare and demolitions, areas where Sarah's analytical mind and attention to detail served her well. The demolitions training was particularly complex, requiring candidates to understand the mathematics of explosive charges and the engineering principles that govern their effects. Sarah's academic background helped her grasp these concepts quickly, and she soon became the go-to resource for classmates who were struggling with the technical aspects of explosive ordnance. During one demolitions exercise, Sarah's team was tasked with destroying a simulated enemy bridge using precise charges that would sever the structure without causing excessive collateral damage. The calculations required consideration of multiple variables. the type and quantity of explosives, the placement of charges for maximum effect, and the timing sequences that would ensure complete destruction. Sarah worked through the problem methodically, analyzing the bridge's construction and identifying the critical structural points that would need to be targeted. She calculated the minimum explosive charges required for each point, factoring in variables such as concrete density, steel reinforcement, and blast effects. Her teammates watched with admiration as she worked through complex mathematical formulas with apparent ease. "How do you make that look so simple?" asked Jackson, a teammate who had been struggling with the demolitions calculations. "It's not simple," Sarah replied as she double-checked her figures. "But every problem has a logical solution if you break it down into manageable pieces. Demolitions is just applied physics and engineering. Once you understand the principles, the calculations follow naturally." When they executed the demolition, Sarah's calculations proved to be precisely accurate. The bridge collapsed exactly as predicted, with minimal waste of explosive material and perfect timing. The evaluating instructors noted her technical expertise and her ability to explain complex concepts to her teammates. But it was during advanced combat training that Sarah truly distinguished herself as a future SEAL operator. The exercises simulated real-world combat conditions, with live ammunition, explosive devices, and scenarios based on actual special operations missions. The margin for error was minimal, and candidates who couldn't perform under genuine stress were removed from the program. The urban warfare exercise that Sarah was currently navigating represented the culmination of months of tactical training. Her team was responsible for infiltrating a simulated enemy compound, neutralizing hostile forces, and extracting valuable intelligence before escaping to a predetermined extraction point. The exercise was conducted with live ammunition and explosive charges, creating genuine danger that required absolute precision in execution. Sarah moved her team forward, using tactical formations they had practiced hundreds of times. Each movement was deliberate and coordinated, with team members providing cover for each other as they advanced toward their objective. The weeks of training had molded them into a cohesive unit that could communicate effectively even under the stress of simulated combat. As they approached the target building, Sarah identified 2 enemy sentries positioned to cover the main entrance. She signaled her team to hold position while she studied the tactical situation. The exercise required stealth initially, as engaging the sentries would alert other enemy forces and complicate their mission. Sarah developed a plan that would allow them to bypass the sentries using a combination of diversion and concealment. She positioned 2 team members to create a distraction on one side of the building, while the rest of the team infiltrated from the opposite direction. The plan required precise timing and coordination, but it offered the best chance of maintaining the element of surprise. The diversion worked perfectly. As the sentries investigated noise from the false position, Sarah led the infiltration team through an unguarded entrance. They moved through the building systematically, clearing each room according to established protocols and gathering intelligence materials as specified in their mission brief. The real test came when they encountered unexpected resistance from enemy forces that weren't part of the original scenario. The instructors had introduced a dynamic element to the exercise, forcing the team to adapt their plan in real time while under pressure. Sarah's ability to make quick tactical decisions would determine whether the mission succeeded or failed. "Contact left!" shouted Rodriguez as simulated enemy fire erupted from an adjacent room. The team immediately moved to cover positions, returning fire while Sarah assessed the new tactical situation. The unexpected enemy position blocked their planned escape route, forcing them to find an alternative way to reach the extraction point. Sarah's mind raced through the options available to them. They could attempt to fight their way through the enemy position, but that would likely result in casualties and mission failure. They could try to find another exit route, but their time limit was rapidly approaching. Or they could turn the unexpected encounter into an opportunity to demonstrate advanced tactical skills. She chose the third option, developing a plan that would eliminate the enemy threat while maintaining their mission timeline. She positioned her team to create overlapping fields of fire, then used explosive charges to create a new exit route through an exterior wall. The combination of aggressive tactics and creative problem-solving allowed them to neutralize the enemy threat and escape the building ahead of schedule. As they moved toward the extraction point, Sarah's team encountered one final challenge. Enemy reinforcements had arrived and were conducting a sweep pattern that threatened to intercept them before they could reach safety. Sarah had to choose between hiding and waiting for the enemy to pass, which might cause them to miss their extraction window, or finding a way to evade detection while maintaining their timeline. She chose to split her team, sending 3 members on a circuitous route that would take longer but offered better concealment, while she and 2 others took a more direct path that carried higher risk but would ensure they reached the extraction point on time. It was a calculated risk that required her to balance mission success against team safety. Both elements of her team reached the extraction point within the time limit, having successfully completed all mission objectives without casualties. The evaluating instructors were impressed not only with the team's tactical performance, but with Sarah's leadership under pressure. Chief Ramirez approached Sarah as the exercise concluded. "Outstanding mission leadership, Martinez," he said. "Your ability to adapt to changing conditions while maintaining focus on the primary objectives is exactly what we look for in SEAL operators. You didn't just complete the mission, you dominated it." The praise was gratifying, but Sarah knew that this exercise was just one of many evaluations that would determine her fitness for graduation. The instructors were watching every aspect of her performance, looking for any sign that she wasn't ready for the responsibilities of a Navy SEAL. Over the following weeks, the remaining candidates faced a series of comprehensive evaluations that tested everything they had learned during Bud/S. They were evaluated on physical fitness, water competency, land warfare tactics, demolitions expertise, and leadership ability. Each evaluation was conducted under realistic stress conditions that simulated the pressures of actual combat operations. Sarah approached each evaluation with the same methodical preparation that had served her throughout training. She studied the scenarios, analyzed the requirements, and developed strategies that would allow her to perform at her maximum capability. Her academic approach to tactical problems continued to set her apart from classmates who relied primarily on instinct and aggression. During the final leadership evaluation, Sarah was placed in command of a complex mission that required her to coordinate multiple teams in achieving simultaneous objectives. The scenario was designed to test her ability to manage resources, adapt to changing conditions, and maintain mission focus under extreme pressure. The mission required her to assault a fortified position while simultaneously conducting a rescue operation and gathering intelligence from multiple sources. She had limited resources and faced time constraints that would challenge even experienced operators. The evaluation was designed to push candidates beyond their comfort zones and identify those who could perform under the most demanding conditions. Sarah began by conducting a thorough analysis of the mission requirements and available resources. She identified the critical path that would allow all objectives to be achieved within the time limit, then allocated her personnel and equipment to maximize efficiency. Her planning was meticulous, accounting for contingencies and alternative approaches if the primary plan encountered unexpected obstacles. The mission execution demonstrated Sarah's growth as a tactical leader. She maintained constant communication with all team elements, providing guidance and support as needed while avoiding micromanagement that would stifle initiative. When one team encountered unexpected resistance that threatened to derail the operation, Sarah quickly reallocated resources and modified the plan to maintain mission success. Her ability to remain calm and analytical under pressure impressed not only her classmates but also the senior instructors who were evaluating her performance. She had demonstrated the kind of leadership that would be essential in real-world special operations, where rapid decision-making and adaptive thinking often meant the difference between mission success and failure. As Bud/S training neared its conclusion, Sarah reflected on the transformation she had undergone over the past 6 months. She had arrived as a determined but untested candidate who had to prove her worth every day. She was now a confident, tactical leader who had earned the respect of her peers and instructors through consistent performance under pressure. The final weeks included comprehensive written examinations that tested candidates' understanding of special warfare theory, tactical principles, and operational procedures. Sarah's academic strength served her well during these evaluations, as she was able to demonstrate not just practical skills but also theoretical understanding of the principles that guided SEAL operations. She also participated in final fitness evaluations that confirmed her physical readiness for assignment to a SEAL team. Her performance in all categories had improved dramatically since the beginning of training, reflecting the intensive conditioning and skill development that was the hallmark of the Bud/S program. Most importantly, Sarah had proven that she could function effectively as part of a special operations team. Her teammates trusted her judgment, followed her leadership, and counted on her to perform under pressure. She had overcome the skepticism that had followed her throughout her military career and established herself as a capable warrior who happened to be female rather than a female trying to be a warrior. The graduation ceremony was scheduled for the following week, and Sarah knew that she would be among the small percentage of candidates who had successfully completed the program. She had achieved her goal of becoming the first female Navy SEAL, but she also understood that graduation was just the beginning of her journey. Real SEAL operations would present challenges that training could only simulate, and she would need to prove herself all over again when she joined an operational team. But she felt confident that the foundation she had built during Bud/S would support her through whatever challenges lay ahead. As Sarah prepared for the final phase of her training, she thought about all the people who had supported her journey and all those who had doubted her abilities. She had proven that determination, intelligence, and adaptability could overcome physical limitations and social barriers. Most importantly, she had proven it to herself. The satellite phone crackled to life in the darkness of the Afghan mountains, carrying orders that would define Sarah Martinez's legacy as a Navy SEAL. After 18 months of operational deployments where she had proven herself in countless missions, this assignment would be different. Intelligence indicated that a high-value target was being held in a compound that conventional forces couldn't reach. The mission required the kind of precision and stealth that only the most elite operators could provide. Sarah checked her equipment one final time as her 6-man team prepared for insertion. Team leader, Chief Petty Officer Michael "Tank" Thompson, had initially been skeptical about having a female operator on his team, but months of successful operations had transformed his doubts into complete confidence in her abilities. The team had evolved into a perfectly coordinated unit where gender was irrelevant and competence was the only measure that mattered. "Martinez, you'll take point on the infiltration," Thompson said during the final briefing. "Your movement through confined spaces gives us the best chance of getting inside undetected. Once we locate the target, Jackson and Rodriguez will handle security while you and Peterson conduct the extraction." The assignment represented a complete reversal from the skepticism Sarah had faced throughout her journey to becoming a SEAL. She was no longer being given token assignments or being protected from the most dangerous missions. Thompson was giving her the most critical role in the operation because he knew she was the best person for the job. The helicopter insertion went smoothly, with the team landing 3 kilometers from the target compound under cover of darkness. Sarah led the patrol through mountainous terrain that would have challenged even experienced operators, navigating by compass and GPS while maintaining the kind of noise discipline that kept them invisible to enemy sentries. As they approached the compound, Sarah's training from Bud/S proved invaluable. Her ability to analyze complex tactical situations allowed her to identify the optimal infiltration route through defensive positions that seemed impenetrable. She had developed into the kind of operator who could see solutions where others saw only obstacles. The compound was heavily fortified, with multiple defensive positions and sophisticated surveillance equipment. Sarah spent 30 minutes studying the target, identifying patterns in the guard rotations and weaknesses in the perimeter security. Her patience and attention to detail revealed a narrow window of opportunity that would allow them to breach the compound without alerting the enemy. "I've got a path," she whispered into her radio. "Guard rotation gives us a 4-minute window starting in 6 minutes. Single entry point through the northeast corner where the wall has partial concealment from shadows." Thompson trusted Sarah's assessment completely. Over the past year, her tactical analysis had been consistently accurate, and her ability to identify infiltration routes had become legendary within the special operations community. She had developed a reputation for finding ways into impossible targets that had earned her the respect of even the most traditional operators. The infiltration went exactly as Sarah had planned. Her team moved through the defensive perimeter like ghosts, exploiting the brief gaps in coverage that she had identified during her reconnaissance. Once inside the compound, they moved with the kind of coordination that could only come from months of training and combat experience together. Sarah located the building where intelligence indicated the target was being held. The structure was a traditional Afghan compound with thick walls and minimal windows, designed to provide security against both the elements and hostile forces. Getting inside would require careful planning and flawless execution. She identified a weakness in the building's design, a small ventilation opening that was large enough for her to use, but too small for her larger teammates. It was exactly the kind of situation where her physical characteristics became an operational advantage rather than a limitation. "I can get inside through the roof vent," she reported to Thompson. "Once I'm in, I can secure the interior and provide entry for the rest of the team." Thompson nodded his approval. Sarah's ability to access confined spaces had been valuable in previous operations, but this mission would push those capabilities to their limits. The ventilation system would be dark, narrow, and potentially booby-trapped, requiring her to navigate purely by feel while remaining completely silent. Sarah removed her heavier equipment and prepared for the infiltration. She had done similar entries dozens of times during training, but this was different. A real hostage's life depended on her ability to get inside the building without alerting the guards who were holding him. The climb to the roof was straightforward, but entering the ventilation system required Sarah to contort her body into positions that would have been impossible for larger operators. She moved through the narrow passages with the kind of controlled movement that came from years of specialized training, using her fingertips to navigate in complete darkness. After what felt like hours but was actually only 12 minutes, Sarah reached the interior of the building. She lowered herself silently into a corridor and immediately began gathering intelligence on the guard positions and the location of the hostage. Her night vision equipment revealed 3 guards positioned throughout the building, with the hostage apparently held in a secured room on the second floor. Sarah's radio whispered the information to her teammates positioned outside the building. Thompson quickly developed a plan that would allow them to neutralize the guards simultaneously while ensuring the hostage's safety. The operation required split-second timing and perfect coordination between team members. "On my mark." Thompson's voice was barely audible through the radio. 3, 2, 1, execute. Sarah moved with lethal precision, neutralizing her assigned target before he could react or sound an alarm. The coordination between team members was flawless, with all 3 guards eliminated simultaneously without alerting other enemy forces in the compound. It was the kind of operation that looked effortless but required months of training and absolute trust between teammates. The hostage extraction went smoothly, with Sarah taking the lead in securing the rescued individual and preparing him for transport. The man had been held captive for 3 weeks and was in poor physical condition, requiring careful handling during the extraction process. As they prepared to leave the compound, Sarah's training from Bud/S again proved valuable. She identified an extraction route that avoided the primary defensive positions and would allow them to reach their evacuation point without engaging superior enemy forces. Her ability to think tactically under pressure had become one of her defining characteristics as an operator. The team's extraction from the compound was as smooth as their infiltration had been. Sarah's route selection kept them away from enemy patrols, and they reached the evacuation point ahead of schedule. The entire operation had been completed without casualties and without compromising their position to enemy forces. As the helicopter lifted off, carrying the team and the rescued hostage toward safety, Thompson approached Sarah with an expression of professional satisfaction. "Outstanding work, Martinez. Your infiltration made the difference between mission success and failure. That kind of specialized capability is exactly what makes SEALs effective." The praise meant more to Sarah than Thompson probably realized. She had spent her entire military career proving that she belonged in elite units, facing skepticism and having to demonstrate her competence repeatedly. But operations like this one showed that she had not just earned acceptance, she had become an essential part of the team's capabilities. Over the following months, Sarah participated in increasingly complex operations that showcased the full range of her skills as a Navy SEAL. She conducted maritime infiltrations where her swimming expertise allowed her team to approach targets from unexpected directions. She participated in mountain warfare operations where her endurance and navigation skills were essential for mission success. Each operation added to her reputation within the special operations community. Senior commanders began specifically requesting Sarah's team for missions that required her particular combination of skills: technical expertise, tactical intelligence, and the ability to access areas that were impossible for conventional forces. During one particularly challenging mission, Sarah's team was tasked with infiltrating a terrorist training facility that was located in an urban environment with heavy civilian presence. The mission required surgical precision to avoid collateral damage while neutralizing a high-value target who had been responsible for multiple attacks against coalition forces. Sarah's role in the planning phase was crucial. Her analytical approach to tactical problems allowed her to identify a solution that would minimize risk to civilians, while maximizing the probability of mission success. She developed an infiltration plan that used the urban environment's infrastructure to approach the target building without being detected. The operation required Sarah to navigate through utility tunnels and drainage systems that connected to the target building. It was exactly the kind of environment where her smaller size and technical skills provided significant advantages over larger operators who might not have been able to access the same routes. The mission was executed flawlessly, with the target neutralized and the team extracted without civilian casualties or detection by local security forces. Sarah's infiltration had allowed the team to position themselves perfectly for the assault, demonstrating once again that her unique capabilities were valuable assets rather than limitations to work around. Word of Sarah's operational success spread throughout the special operations community and eventually reached the attention of senior military leadership. She was invited to participate in a classified program that was developing new tactics and techniques for special operations forces, an assignment that represented the ultimate vindication of her journey from skeptical recruit to respected operator. The assignment placed Sarah in a position where she was not just participating in special operations but helping to define their future development. Her experiences as the first female Navy SEAL provided unique insights into how elite units could be made more effective by embracing diversity of thought and capability rather than maintaining traditional limitations. During her assignment to the development program, Sarah worked with some of the most experienced operators in the special operations community. These were legendary figures who had participated in the most famous and successful operations of the past 2 decades. Their acceptance of her as a peer represented the complete transformation of attitudes that had once questioned whether women could serve effectively in combat roles. Colonel James Harrison, the program director, approached Sarah after a particularly successful test of new tactical procedures. "Martinez, your contributions to this program have been exceptional. You've helped us understand how to think differently about special operations capabilities. Have you considered what you want to do next in your career?" Sarah had indeed been thinking about her future. She had achieved her original goal of becoming a Navy SEAL and had proven herself in operational environments, but she also recognized that her journey had created opportunities to influence the broader military culture in ways that could benefit future generations of service members. "I'd like to continue operational assignments, Colonel, but I'm also interested in training and development roles where I can help prepare the next generation of special operators. My experiences might be valuable in helping the community continue to evolve." Harrison nodded approvingly. "That's exactly the kind of thinking we need. The military is changing, and we need leaders who can help us adapt while maintaining our operational effectiveness. I think there are opportunities for someone with your background to make a significant impact." Several months later, Sarah received orders that would take her career in a new direction. She was assigned to the Naval Special Warfare Development Group, where she would be responsible for developing new training programs and operational procedures. The assignment represented a recognition that her value to the military extended beyond her individual operational capabilities. Her first project involved redesigning portions of the BUD/S curriculum to better prepare candidates for the diverse challenges they would face in modern special operations. Sarah drew on her own experiences and those of her teammates to identify areas where training could be improved to produce more effective operators. One of her key innovations was the development of problem-solving exercises that emphasized adaptability and creative thinking, rather than just physical toughness. She had learned during her own training that the most valuable operators were those who could find solutions to unexpected problems, and she wanted to ensure that future SEALs were prepared for the complex challenges they would face. Sarah also worked to develop training scenarios that reflected the reality of modern warfare, where special operators often worked alongside diverse coalition forces and had to adapt to rapidly changing political and tactical situations. Her experiences in international operations provided valuable insights into the kind of cultural awareness and diplomatic sensitivity that modern SEALs needed to develop. The training programs that Sarah developed were eventually adopted throughout the special operations community and became models for other elite military units. Her work helped to establish new standards for special operations training that emphasized intellectual agility and adaptive thinking, alongside traditional physical and tactical skills. As Sarah's reputation as a training developer grew, she began receiving invitations to speak at military academies and professional development conferences. These speaking opportunities allowed her to share her experiences and insights with the broader military community, helping to shape attitudes about diversity and effectiveness in combat units. During one particularly memorable presentation at the Naval War College, Sarah addressed an audience that included senior military leaders from all branches of service. Her topic was adaptive leadership in special operations, and she used her own journey as a case study in how organizations could benefit from embracing diverse perspectives and capabilities. "The question isn't whether women can be effective in special operations," Sarah told the audience. "The question is whether we're smart enough as an organization to take advantage of all the capabilities and perspectives available to us. My success as a Navy SEAL isn't about proving women can be warriors. It's about proving that the best military units are those that focus on competence rather than conformity." The presentation was well received and led to additional opportunities for Sarah to influence military policy and training standards. She was invited to participate in Department of Defense committees that were examining the role of women in combat units and developing policies for their integration into previously restricted specialties. Her work on these committees helped to establish the procedures and standards that would govern the integration of women into special operations forces throughout the military. Sarah's operational experience provided credibility that academic researchers and policy analysts couldn't match, and her recommendations carried significant weight in policy discussions. During this period, Sarah also maintained her operational qualifications and continued to participate in selected missions that required her specific capabilities. She had become a unique asset within the special operations community, an experienced operator who also had the analytical skills and policy expertise needed to help the community continue to evolve. One of her most significant operational assignments during this period involved leading a joint task force that included operators from multiple countries. The mission required her to coordinate between different military cultures and operational philosophies while maintaining the kind of tactical effectiveness that special operations demanded. The success of this mission led to Sarah being recognized as one of the most effective leaders in the special operations community. She had demonstrated that her leadership capabilities extended beyond her own team to encompass the kind of complex multinational operations that were becoming increasingly common in modern warfare. As Sarah reflected on her journey from skeptical recruit to respected leader, she realized that her greatest achievement wasn't becoming the first female Navy SEAL. Her greatest achievement was helping to change how the military thought about capability and effectiveness, opening doors for future generations of service members who might not fit traditional molds, but who had valuable contributions to make. The young woman who had once been told she was too small and too weak to succeed in special operations had not only proven those assessments wrong, but had helped to establish new standards for what made an effective warrior. Her journey had shown that the most important qualifications for special operations were not physical attributes that could be measured, but mental characteristics that allowed operators to adapt, overcome, and excel in impossible situations. Years later, when Sarah looked back on her career, she took particular pride in the letters she received from young women who had been inspired by her example to pursue their own military careers. Many of them had gone on to serve with distinction in roles that had previously been closed to women, carrying forward the legacy of proving that competence was the only qualification that truly mattered. But perhaps more importantly, Sarah had helped to establish a culture within special operations where diversity of thought and capability was recognized as a strategic advantage rather than a challenge to overcome. The units she had helped to train and develop were more effective because they included operators with different backgrounds, perspectives, and approaches to problem-solving. The skeptics who had once questioned whether Sarah belonged in the Navy SEALs had been proven wrong in the most definitive way possible. She had not only succeeded in their exclusive community, but had helped to make it stronger, more capable, and more effective than it had ever been before. Sarah Martinez had struck back against every doubt, every limitation, and every barrier that had been placed in her path. But her ultimate victory wasn't personal vindication. It was the transformation of an entire community's understanding of what made warriors effective in the modern world. She had proven that the future belonged to those who were smart enough to embrace all forms of excellence, regardless of where they might come from.